What's up guys, welcome to Echo Productions, I'm Silas Willoughby, and about 10 days ago I made a video titled Why Your Videos Probably Suck. And I spent a good chunk of that video hitting on uncreative, boring filmmakers. But today I want to do the opposite. Today I want to take a look at how Apple managed to make an ad that not only made me want to buy their product, but barely left me with my jaw intact. Here's the ad.
What about the cameras? Well, do they have 2 times? Yeah, well, what about... Stop doing that. Don't be a...
Here.
Hey! You never mentioned emojis, but it's my favorite.
Okay, so wow, and I'm not the only one who had that reaction. But what is it about that ad that was so well done? Was it the cool typography? No, I mean, I've made typography ads before, but I do think that played a big part. And that's where we get to what I think was the biggest thing that sets this ad apart. Apple knew it had a loyal audience, so filmmakers took risks that other filmmakers would be afraid to take. They weren't really worried about a bad reception. I mean, sure, there's the Samsung fans that will hate on it, but otherwise they weren't worried. So they could focus on getting a jaw-dropping reception, and by being brave enough to take those risks, they made an excellent commercial. I think the biggest thing was the pacing. The filmmakers really nailed it. They kept it fast and flowing while covering a ton of information in a short time span. And they even had us amused at points. Sure, we might not have laughed out loud, but it was amusing. And while it may have been too fast for a good portion of viewers to take in everything that they had said, the first time around, it still got the general idea across. Now, to really break this down, I've broken the commercial up into 7 scenes, and yes, I cut out the Apple Watch part. First, we have the intro, which is where the filmmakers catch your attention. Then we have the XS ad, then the camera scene, then the XR scene, and the XR camera scene. And finally, we have the closing scene. That's a lot for 77 seconds. That's 11 seconds a scene. In those 11 seconds, they have to introduce a new product or feature, explain it, and get you hyped for it. That is not an easy task. Let's take a look at the first scene. This intro scene totals in at 10.2 seconds, and there are 19 cuts depending on how you count. I'm counting major visual changes or the introduction of more information. That's 0.53 seconds a shot, this long. And generally just cutting that fast would leave an audience lost and confused. But combine that with good music and sound design and they really get into it. The cuts are always on the beat of the music or some part of the incredible sound design. Take the drum roll for instance. Which we will get more into later. The filmmakers took the first few seconds to introduce you to the ad. They got you into the flow and told you what was about to happen. Over the course of the first 10 seconds, they used 14 words, 5 of which were the word big. So viewers picked up quickly on the theme the filmmakers were trying to convey. That the news that Apple has is big. That and the build up with the drum roll and the beat drop, and you're already hyped for the reveal, even though it's been only 10 seconds. So moral of the first scene, really get into the sound design and then you can be way more aggressive with your edit and keep your viewers engaged. Especially if you nail the first few seconds. Which, if we were to take a look at the actual shots, this is not expensive or hard to create. It's mostly just text on black with only 3 actual shots. A drone shot of Apple Park in Cupertino, a shot of the actual event, and a shot of a drummer. So this first part is only really so good because of the sound and the way it was edited. And the very clever text. All designed to get you to stick around for the rest of the ad. This scene is the longest in the entire ad, coming in at 18.8 seconds, with what I've counted to be 26 cuts. Again, these are major visual changes or information dumps. This scene is slightly slower paced than the opening scene, adding up to about 0.72 seconds a shot. But they do have a ton to introduce in the scene, and 0.72 is still very quick. Here it is. And honestly, I don't have that much to say about this scene. They're back with the impressive words with phrases like, the biggest display ever, more epic than ever before, super retina display, insanely powerful. You get the point. And they do us a favor at the end of the scene by slowing it down, quite literally, and giving us a bit of comedic relief by throwing beer at an iPhone. Who throws beer at a phone? And something I did really notice in the scene was how much detail they put into it, especially with the lock on the Face ID and the chip when talking about the new A12 Bionic chip. Anyway, let's move on to the next scene, the camera scene.
What about the cameras? Well, do they have 2 times? Yeah, well, what about stop doing don't be it.
Now, this scene has to be my favorite of the entire ad, and you can really tell they put a lot of thought into it. I mean, take a look at the person who's asking the questions. He's obviously an expert, and an expert on cameras for that matter. And he's just the kind of guy we wouldn't normally cut off. He's a charismatic, intelligent guy. And he's an expert in his field. But by cutting him off, and even talking about that for a second, they show us that they are better than him. Or at least they're not intimidated by him. Which subconsciously makes us think that the cameras on the new phones are better than the DSLRs he's repairing. And, well, it also amuses us again. So, through this 7-second scene, the filmmakers managed to make us excited about the cameras, but not really tell us anything, since, well, it's an S year at Apple, so there weren't any huge improvements. Unless you count this 0.6 of a seconds, they really show you nothing, while keeping us interested and amusing us, all in 7 seconds. Alright, so this scene I call the XR scene, and like the XS scene, I don't have that much to say about it. It's the slowest paced scene of the entire ad, but it doesn't really feel like that, because at this point the music is at its fastest, and by now we're sticking around, so the filmmakers do get to waste a bit of time by making phone fireworks. Anyway, next up is the XR camera scene. Alright, so this is the shortest scene at a whopping 5 seconds, and literally the filmmakers don't tell us anything. But it's well edited and short, and when you have great sound mixing and really cool lighting, you can keep almost anyone interested in anything. Anyway, here's the last scene, and yeah, I'm going to talk about this one a bit, so bear with me.
Hey! You never mentioned emojis, but it's my favorite.
Alright, so on the surface that didn't seem too impressive. I mean, it's still cool, but I didn't really want to talk about most of this. It's the part with the emojis. This part.
Hey! You never mentioned emojis, but it's my favorite.
What can I be so interested in? And it's the way they cut him off. And sure, the music was a really cool way to do that, and I love how the Apple logo just showed up at the end. But the big thing for me is the way, over the course of this entire ad, they just cut stuff left and right. And this is a huge thing that sets apart great filmmakers from amateurs with cameras. A lot of the time, most filmmakers, and I'm guilty of this too, are afraid to cut because the shot looks good or it works. But in this ad for new phones, they really showed us up. They cut everything. Even in the scene where the guy is talking to text, they cut him off over and over again, and sometimes we didn't even notice. My favorite example being when he says, "Stop saying that."
What about the cameras? Well, do they have 2 times? Yeah, well, what about stop doing don't be it.
Most people I showed didn't even notice that he didn't say that. It was a masterful way to cut him off. And you see talented filmmakers do this all the time. Conversation scenes are a great example of this. An inexperienced filmmaker will take 3 angles of a conversation scene, and then switch to a new angle for each line. But an experienced filmmaker will cut back and forth between the actors, showing the actor delivering the line, and the other's reaction, and a shot with both of them all over the course of a line, keeping it a lot more interesting and showing you a lot more of what's going on. Seth Worley, the writer and director that brought us the Story Clock Notebook, once said, "Cut your whole movie at a certain point." And I think he had a point. Getting attached to shots is a big problem for filmmakers. you're trying to tell a story, or in the case of today's video, sell something. But if you get attached to a shot and you keep it, even if it means it damages your story, you're not doing anyone a favor. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I just took a lot more time than most people would spend analyzing an entire film to analyze an ad, but I thought this was a great example. Anyway, this has been Echo Productions. I'm Silas Willoughby, and I'll see you in the next one.